This is the Mizuno Alpha II Japan, which has a little bit of a tough task on its hands because it needs to follow up and potentially also improve on what I think has been the best speed boot on the market for the last 2 years. And in today's video, I'll tell you what's good on the Alpha II and of course also what's not so great to hopefully help you decide if you should buy this or just stock up instead on the Alpha I. So I'm JayMike and this is my review of the Mizuno Alpha II Japan. So the Alpha II is a bit like the iPhone, where most things look and feel the same. And that's not far off, as Mizuno followed the Japanese Kaizen philosophy of small but significant changes to create what they believe is a superior boot to the Alpha I. And most of the work that Mizuno have done can be found on the heat-pressed upper here, which is now made with 6 layers instead of the original 5 layers on the Alpha I. And the composition can get a little bit nerdy here, but what Mizuno have essentially done is to change the engineered fit frame and the engineered fit sponge, so basically the skeleton and the foam package of the boot, they made them a little bit smaller and also made them ever so slightly thinner and flatter. And then instead, they've sandwiched in underneath another layer of polyurethane, which is basically the plastic that's also used as the top coating on the boot. And they've done that, they say, in the name of a more comfortable fit. And that's interesting because initially, to me, the new upper on the Alpha II here means that it just feels a little bit more structured and, a little bit more plasticky, to be honest, a little bit more compact around your foot. And I know saying that it's stiff, that's not the right word to use because it's definitely not stiff, but to me it's just not as pliable and soft and textile-like as the upper that we got on the Alpha I was. And just an example of moving your toes inside the boot, there's just a little bit more structure and it doesn't pop the same way the upper when you move your toes. Now the good thing is that it gets softer as you start to break it in. As the body heat starts to work with the upper, it does get there. And while I personally haven't reached Alpha I levels of softness yet, it is getting closer and closer the more I wear the boot. So if the upper on the Alpha I is a 9.5, this is probably an 8.5 out of the box and a 9 once you break it in. So the fit is still good. It's just a slightly different feeling. But the reason the upper feels so good, despite the upper being a little bit more rigid at first, is the shape, which is probably one of the best shapes on a modern boot I think I've tried for many, many years. Because as you put it on, it just feels easy and natural and still offers a relatively close fit. You just put it on and it feels made for your foot. Is that good? What's really wonderful is that it fits both my relatively slim foot, but it's also great for wider feet. And what's even wilder is that the Alpha II actually feels even better for wider feet than the first generation. That was already pretty good. And the reason for that is the liner material called Zero Glide, the black stuff that you see in the heel here, which on the Alpha I covered only the back third of the boot, but now they've used it as the inner liner on the entire upper. Now, Zero Glide is this sticky material that prevents the foot from moving, which is brilliant, I'll get back to that, but it also feels ever so slightly thinner compared to the suede liner that they used on the Alpha I. So it does feel as if there's a bit more of a roomy sensation in the forefoot in the Alpha II. But what Mizuno have also done is to actually fix the shape of the upper around the top part of the boot. Where on the Alpha I, you can see the flaps here, they were a little bit loose. They didn't fit your foot all that closely. So they fixed that, meaning that they now sit a little bit closer to the foot as you lace it up, making it feel a little bit more secure and connected, and just less open and flappy. And it's brilliant. But the best thing about the fit is actually in the heel, which I've always said can make or break a football boot. And in the Alpha II, just like the Alpha I, it really makes it because the heel is fantastic. The shape is great. The way it just cradles around your foot, really grabs it and pinches it in the right way to kind of lock it in without giving you any pressure points is absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, you have the Zero Glide in the heel that's actually even stickier than what you find on the rest of the boot. And it also means that the lock-in, the reducing of movement in the heel, phenomenal. And when you combine that with this skeleton frame here, and of course the really deep lacing that you can just tie in so well, the lockdown and that feeling of your foot being held in place without moving, again, phenomenal. And quite comfortably, the very best lockdown feeling on the market right now. It just doesn't get better than this. And in a speed boot,
that's what you want. Now, size-wise on the Alpha II here, on the first generation, I had to go down half a size to get really this good snug fit, and that's going to be my choice for the Alpha II as well. But with that said, if you don't really dig that snug fit, or you just have a wide foot, you need a little bit more room inside the boot, going true to size is definitely also a solid option. It depends on your preferences. But no matter what, honestly, you're gonna get a great fit. Break it in. Woo!
And then there is the outsole, which hasn't changed all that much. And still,
most of it is the same as on the Alpha I, which in my book is a good thing. So you get the same triangular studs here that have this really nice aggressive bite in the ground when you push off in all directions. And then also you have the Carvo insert on the Japan model here, which is a material that's quite similar to carbon fiber. But the thing is that it sits in there and it's really stiff. It offers this insane snapback, this very springy sensation as you push off. And the responsiveness because of that is really good. But a lot of players reported back and said that they were actually put off the Japan model because the Carvo insert made the sole feel too stiff. So Mizuno reduced the thickness from 1.2 to 0.9 millimeters, meaning that it's just less stiff. And while less responsiveness sounds bad, personally, I actually don't mind that it's a little bit more mellow, but still it has that punchy, hardcore, powerful feeling when you push off. And when you combine that with the lockdown of the upper, the responsiveness, the powerful sensation, it's just everything a speed boot is about. And I can't get enough of it.
But we should also look at the touch, which is still very speed boot-like, if you will.
And it's a pretty thin upper that gives this pretty up-close and personal, direct feel on the ball. And given that the foam skeleton here isn't overly thick, you do get a little hint of something in between your foot and the ball in some places when you touch the foam skeleton, but it is a very close, sharp feel on the ball. It feels very synthetic upper-like. It has a little bit of it's not much, but it's got this hint of a waxy, sticky sensation on the upper. There's a very low, nimble toe box, and it's very much one of those what you put in is what you get type of boots. But I like it's no nonsense, and I enjoy it.
So the changes sound mostly like good ones, but as I said in the intro, there are also a few annoying things that I'm not that happy with.
And the first thing is that more structured, slightly stiffer upper, which, don't get me wrong, the Alpha is still one of the best fitting boots for me, but the first generation is just softer, and I like that more. Secondly, the Japan model here is, it's expensive. And yeah, I know that it's built by hand in Japan by some of the finest craftsmen and women, and the build quality is nuts. But 330 euros is a lot of money. And I know I'm nitpicking, but personally, I just don't like the position of the Runbird logo compared to what was on the first generation. Will it affect the performance on the pitch? No, not one bit, but this just looks faster to me. So it matters. And finally, it'd be nice if Mizuno would make the sizing a little bit easier to figure out. Because I kind of feel stuck in between two sizes where, yes, true to size is nice and roomy, going down half a size to a 5.5 UK, ridiculous by the way, is maybe on the snug side. Something in between would perhaps have been better. For me at least.
With that said, however, to me, the Alpha II is still the king of speed boots. And I mentioned how it's better than the first Alpha in one aspect and worse in another. Let me explain.
See, I think that the lockdown and the performance kind of feels a few percentages better, whereas the upper here just feels a few percent less soft. Despite of that, of course, I still think that the Alpha II is the best speed boot around. But the competition is getting closer. However, if you haven't worn the Alpha I, the Alpha II here will probably be the aha experience you're expecting. But if you have worn or own an Alpha I, I don't think it's worth getting, hardcore FOMO over not getting a pair of these right away. Unless, of course, you need that fraction bit more room inside the boot or you just want that better lockdown. But by and large, it is more of the same. And that same is very good. So if you want the Alpha 2, you can buy it in the link to Unisport right over there. If you're new to the channel, of course, don't forget to subscribe with the notifications on. And if you want to see more Wicked Boot videos, click the playlist right down there. With those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.